All right. Well, Gabby, thank you so much for joining me on this conversation. I'm really looking forward to hearing about your journey. And we've just spoken just prior to this, recording starting about the fact you joined us from Hungary. Perhaps you can tell us who you are as a coach, who you are as a human being. And I know that we've had a lot of Hungarians join us within ICCS, quite a lot. And I'm curious about where that fits into. So just a bit of background to yourself.
So I'm an ICF accredited professional certified coach currently. And I come from a business coaching background. I come from actually a business background, and I transitioned into coaching around 2017. And ever since I've been coaching, my background is strongly related to neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. I'm an NLP trainer certified by John Grinder. And I have started coaching education. So I actually educate coaches around 2019, 2020, with special focus on NLP. And then I just expanded it into general coaching topics as well, according to the ICF competencies. So I'm not just a coach, but also a coaching educator. And becoming a coaching supervisor fits naturally and organically into this journey of being able to support my students, my clients, my alumni with coaching supervision as well. Because as this profession develops and grows, I think that this supervisory aspect is really needed. And there is this gap or hiatus, I would say, that this needs to be filled. And I thought I would be a good fit for this because of my profile. And I also wanted to offer for my clients and for my students something extra. I just don't let their hands go and off you go now, coach as you want, but rather they have the opportunity to come back and discuss cases, their identity as a coach, their challenges, their blind spots. So everything that coaching supervision can offer, I wanted to incorporate that into the follow-up journey of my students.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. And did you know in some way that you were ready to be a supervisor? Because what I notice sometimes coaches question their readiness. I mean, they might have thousands of hours of experience, but they still think, should I be a supervisor? What happened for you that enabled you to go, okay, now's the time?
Actually, it was a maturing process. So you are right. I was also questioning myself whether I'm ready to jump into this profession. One of the reasons lies in the name of this profession, supervision. So I have to be really some super in something. And before I become supervisory or supervisor or seeing something from above, from a new perspective, I really wanted to gain experience, have my own challenges, overcome my own challenges, have my mentor guide me and go into supervision myself, gain experience. And when I started to experiment with the thought that, okay, this is something that I really find interesting and maybe I could even do that, then I started to open my eyes to opportunities where I could learn coaching supervision.
And when you were looking for a program, I know you joined with a cohort from ICF Hungary, but nonetheless, you made a personal choice as well to join the school and pay the money, so to speak. So, what were you looking for in the course that had to meet your needs?
Well, I wanted to learn internationally, so that was one of the requirements. I didn't want to learn this in Hungary because I'm moving into a more international environment, and I already have many degrees and many papers from Hungary, but their worth, unfortunately, is not that recognized internationally than in Hungary. So this was one of my personal criteria. Then it was recommended by the previous cohort, and the previous cohort actually included my mentor coaches. So people who I regard highly were recommending this course to me when I was asking them about where I should or could learn coaching supervision. So basically twofold: my personal interest and also the recommendations that came.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned at the start that not only you're a coach, but you're influenced by NLP. And I know that NLP can be different from coaching, but it can also be integrated. But you also mentioned that you are qualified as a psychologist now. What did you find as you started to train as a supervisor? What did it add to you that felt different or surprising from what you already have in place?
Oh, it was liberating. Honestly, for me, coaching supervision is liberating because in coaching, we, especially with these ICF standards and competency models, we are not really sharing our own world view or map of the territory. Maybe we are offering it, but we are not that confrontative, and we are not that. I was before. I wouldn't say that not all of the coaches, but I personally was not using myself and my intuition and the space that is between us with the coaching supervision client. I was not using that. So transference, parallel processes, these were aspects of my coaching journey that I did not include, and I do include them in my coaching supervision with more courage, I would say. And the effect is that I became more courageous also as a coach. So that's why I'm saying it's liberating, because I allow myself to use different perspectives, and it's not just obviously with the permission of the client. So I don't do anything against the will of the client, but somehow it expanded my horizon of the tools that I use, including myself as a tool.
Oh, that makes sense. When you, again, going back to the fact that you have these multiple modalities, are you finding that your supervision is feeding into all of them, or is it still kind of very much focused on the coaching world?
So in my coaching supervisor journey, I started with offering coaching supervision to my NLP students and my old NLP students. So it was not just coaching, but rather specifically focused on the people who learned NLP from me. And actually, I do think that the NLP tools are tying back wonderfully to the coaching supervision. So the glasses that the NLP worldview gives you are really helpful also when you are a coaching supervisor. So that was my main niche initially, that, okay, let's focus on you guys who already know NLP, you are coaches, so how can I support you being a coaching supervisor? And then it expanded. So I'm mainly focusing now on coaching, which you mentioned. This is just the coaching. For me, it was even more narrow. It was just coaches with NLP. And now they are expanding into coaching. But also I have some leaders, so managers whom I coach. And now with some of my new clients, I offer them at the beginning of the contracting that we can do pure coaching, or I'm also a coaching supervisor. So if you are also a coaching style leader, that may fit you even better than just being your coach. So this is something that I'm expanding and experimenting with, because honestly, the topics that the coaching supervision focuses on are very valuable for leaders as well.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I certainly the systemic kind of lens of supervision always lends itself to leadership and multi-party systems, So how have you, one of the things we notice with coaches when they first come in is they're very much used to having a client in front of them, and the client is their focus. And then you become a supervisor and you suddenly go, oh my goodness, I've got a coach and a client and a system and myself. How did you experience that shift?
So NLP is a very systemic approach. So for me, the approach itself was familiar and comfortable to move in. The 7I model, however, did guide my focus to be more to be more focused to the point. So there were like not just randomly selected options where we explore, but rather there is this systemic and rigorous way of how we can explore different perspectives of a topic. And that gives me kind of a structured exploration. So I really appreciated that part of the systemic view.
I want to go back to the NLP, if I may, and see how supervision is helping there with your students. But the NLP participants, is it a therapeutic approach to change in NLP or more of a coaching approach?
It's a coaching approach. So the way I educate it is not the therapeutic way, rather the coaching way. And I also, so my NLP courses are open for businessmen as well, and doctors and nurses and lawyers. So it's not just for coaches, but what they get is rather a coaching focused tool set.
That makes sense. Okay, good. I mean, I was kind of curious because I'm always fascinated by how supervision lends itself to so many different approaches. So you can actually use the same basic framework for therapy, coaching, leadership, systemic thinking, and so on. As you went through the journey, Gabby, where did you find yourself challenged in some way as a practitioner? Perhaps you didn't, but I'm curious. Did you find there were parts where you're like, ooh, this is making me have to grow, or this is making me sweat a little bit?
I think that one of my biggest challenges was at the beginning to differentiate between when is it just coaching of coaches and when is it coaching supervision. And apart from practicing, what really helped me were these coaching supervision of coaching supervisors opportunities that you are offering. And I was at one with Beatrice, and her question was, okay, how can this be a coaching supervision focused supervision? And really having this focus in my mind that, okay, this is going to be supervision. It's not just coaching, but rather and having the supervisory hat on. That was actually a challenge in developing my coaching supervisor identity.
Well, where have you got to on that question now? Like everybody, in a sense, has a slightly different and nuanced idea, just as we do about coaching versus mentoring or coaching versus counseling and so on. Where have you personally got to in that distinction?
Well, the systemic view, that was one of the things. I think that my contracting got more refined and more supervisory style. And I think that actually it helps also in my coaching, but it's like a reverse beneficial effect. So the way I contract with the supervisor hat, that's something that I do differently. I also do differently using the 7-eyed model, and that's kind of helping me guide and stay on track of being a supervisor. So that's kind of helping me there. And it's also a good question. It's especially a good question because I do still think that my supervisory identity or supervisor entity identity is developing. So I'm still at the beginning of my journey. And when you ask me if I'm a coach, yeah, so like it's obvious. When you ask me, are you an NLP trainer? Yeah, it's obvious. Are you a coaching supervisor? I can be, but it's a conscious effort. It's not something that comes natural. Like I wake up as a coaching supervisor, rather like I really have to put on that hat and focus and use the tools consciously. So I'm at that stage right now.
Do you have some sense of what would need to change for you to be able to say, I'm a coaching supervisor?
Are you coaching supervising me now? I think practice. I've already started to incorporate the tools, and I have this curiosity whether I incorporate it as a coaching tool, like it adds to my coaching identity, my NLP trainer identity, or whether I'm able to develop this new identity of the coaching supervisor. And this is also in connection with my personal project that I'm focusing on, authority. How do I deal with authority? Because I do have in my mind this very strong connection between being a supervisor and being a person of authority. And I do have some challenges with it, because do I want to be a person of authority? I'm not sure. I'd rather prefer partnership. So how do I deal with that in a coaching supervisory setup? So I have some topics I have to still work through in myself. Also about me thinking about supervision, and about myself thinking how I want to be as a supervisor.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I think holding that inquiry is one of the most important things we can do, because otherwise we end up fossilizing our meaning making. This happened in the coaching world, didn't it? At the start, everybody thought they knew what a coach was in the early period of coaching, and then all of a sudden things start to happen that were like, well, that could be coaching, but it's not quite what you thought it was, and it starts to be more fluid. And that, it's lovely to hold that inquiry, because that's is your personal journey towards what you want to become. You've kind of talked about that question mark, and you've also talked about an uncertainty around quite what the future holds for you as a supervisor, in terms of, is it integrated, is it separate, and so on. Is there anything else you could share about how you see your future as a supervisor, or what you would like to move towards ultimately within the supervision field?
I really like this question, because I don't have an immediate answer. It would be natural for me to just incorporate it into the identities I have as a coach, coaching educator, coaching supervisor. That would be easy. And I'm really curious what is beyond that. And I have no answer for that. Also, yesterday there was this big conference about coaching in Hungary, and I participated, and I listened to this presentation. Actually, it was an outline of a doctoral thesis about AI coaching. And actually, the current state, and this is 2024, November, the current state is that AI coaching can coach as good as a PCC coach. Recognize its emotions, is able to ask questions, absolutely non-judgmental. We will never get there as human beings. Cheap, extremely cheap. So the question comes up, what's next for human coaches? And maybe it's coaching supervision.
Supervising the AI.
Not just the AI, but rather working on topics that require a higher level of complexity.
Yes.
More systemic way of thinking. And coaching supervision gives you just that.
You've given me a little thought here, Gabby, because I don't want to sidetrack us too much, but about a year ago, maybe more, I did a talk on the power of the shadow in coaching, as in the coach's own shadow, because we say we're non-judgmental, but we all judge. But what if that power to judge was actually a useful thing? What if our natural judgment making, what if actually being a pure non-judging machine is not as useful as we think? And I started to question all the assumptions that have been baked into coaching over years, and thinking, well, if AI can do all that, what do we bring that might be surprisingly useful? Because it's a reflection of what's going on for that client in some way. Anyway, it's a bit of a side note, but I think there's something there too, which is how do we bring more of the human being into coaching, rather than a process that is absolutely non-judgmental, et cetera, et cetera? How do we become more human, not less human? Could be an interesting journey.
Absolutely. And I think that this liberation that I experienced with coaching supervision, I think that's kind of leading the way of becoming. I'm not even sure we can become future proof, but maybe if I believe there is future proofness, maybe coaching supervision is one way to go.
Right, nice. Is there any final points you'd like to make about the journey for you becoming a supervisor? Something that perhaps I haven't brought out of you you'd like to share?
Maybe just a quick reflection on the whole 7 months learning process, because we learned so much about existential, psychodynamics, so all kinds of approaches to coaching supervision, and this diversity of methods, and also the fact that we could experiment. We tried everything in small groups. It gave me like 7 months of weekly coaching supervision. Even if it was just 10 minutes or 15 minutes, I was able to work through so many topics that were existentially extremely important for me. And for that, I'm really grateful, because in that 7 months, I made so big decisions, and I transitioned my life from one country to another. And it was a smooth transition. So while this training was just learning a method, learning a new role, it was also a personal transformation for me. So I want to thank you for the 7 months, and thank myself, because I signed up and I showed up. But it came at the best time, and it supported me beyond my expectations.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Gabby, for sharing your journey. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.